Hi, in this episode of Redneck 101, we're talking about fishing the Big Creek area of Lake Lanier in Georgia. And by the creek arm, I really do mean everything closer to the creek than the main channel.
There is a Redeemer, Jesus, God's own Son, precious Lamb of God, Messiah, Holy One.
So to narrate a little bit, Big Creek starts off the screen way up by I-985. It runs down, and when it goes under McEver Road, this is the part that becomes kind of navigable, at least if you have a small aluminum boat like I do. So, you know, the depth here as it goes under McEver Road is about 2 to 4 feet. Gets gradually deeper to about 10 or 12 feet deep as it passes this bend here. When it passes the Burton Mill boat ramp here, it's about 20 feet deep. When you get to here, it's about 30 feet or 40 feet deep. And then between here and here, it goes from 40 to 80 feet deep. And then it crosses, this is the Holiday Marina here, this is the Yacht Club. And it gets from 100 to about 140 feet deep. And this is off the screen here, Three Sisters Island, and this is more or less where it meets up with the main channel out here. And one of the interesting things about Big Creek is that it's fairly fertile. That creek drains a pretty large area between Flowery Branch and Buford. And you notice here in this aerial photograph that it's got this kind of bright green color going on, and that's because there's a lot of phytoplankton in the water. So in the spring, April and May, as the water's warming up, there's a lot of nutrients coming in. The shallower water here is a little more fertile, lots of phytoplankton, lots of zooplankton, lots of bait. And when the herring and the shad run up the creek, and they're doing some breeding action, they're feeding on all that plankton. The bigger fish, the stripers and the catfish and spotted bass, come up here to the shallow water and are chasing them. And then as you pass right here, as the water warms in April and May, the bait and then the predators start to prefer some of the cooler, deeper water. And there's also this ledge right here where it goes from quickly being about 12 feet deep to about 40 feet deep right as you're passing the Burton Mill boat ramp. And so the fish can stage in this little area for a little while. And then as the water heats up and the top layer gets deeper and deeper, then the fish move and the bait move into the deeper water around here. So let's zoom in a little bit and let's study the contours a little more carefully as we talk about the part that I would say is most strongly influenced by the creek is pretty much from here, shallower, and then the area that's influenced by the creek but also influenced by the main lake is sort of between here and here. And then as you get into this area here, it's less influenced by the creek and more strongly influenced by what's happening in the main lake. Okay, so, but one of the things I like to do early in the season is you'll hear me in some of my other videos saying the catfish are biting in the creek backs. And what I really mean is the part from where it goes under McEver Road Bridge about here to about here. And it's just easy to tool around watching the sonar. And when I'm tooling around watching the sonar, I'm not looking for fish. I'm looking for the bait. And so when I see either the big bait balls, they look like big clouds of snow on the sonar, or sometimes you'll even see them rippling on the surface. That's when I stop and I want to fish that area. Sometimes throw out some jug lines, sometimes throw out some blueback herring. But that's where I want to fish, is where I'm marking the bait. I'm not really looking for the bigger arches, which are the actual fish. And from sometime near April 1st to late May, this can be very productive. But once the surface water temperature gets above about 75 degrees, or once the thermocline gets below about 12 feet, the fish are moving deeper, because by mid to late May, as that thermocline is getting deeper, the bait and some of the predator fish, they prefer to stay below the thermocline, and they're pretty much only ambushing stuff when they're moving into the shallower water. So this real interesting area here can be very fertile, and then as the water cools off again in the fall, in September and October, the pattern tends to reverse, and there'll be times when you can find the bait, find the fish up here in the part of the creek arm that's strongly influenced by the creek. All right, so let's recenter things up here. Okay, so just to orient you a little bit, this is where the creek is pretty much starting to enter the main lake. This is Holiday Marina over here to this side of these buoy markers, which are the yellow dots. This is the yacht club over here, and some really interesting underwater features here. An underwater hump here, underwater hump here. So just if it's the right time of year, these underwater features can hold some bait, they can hold some fish. You have some other ones in here, have one in here as well. But the stuff over here, you have to remember that when you look at the aerial photograph, this is all under the Holiday Marina. The other thing about this area is the Holiday Marina, once you get out of the creek out here more toward the main lake, the boat traffic can be really heavy, especially if you're in a small aluminum boat like me. So I try and save my fishing adventures here for the very early morning on weekdays. By weekday afternoons and the weekends, the boat traffic is just too heavy for me. I prefer not to fish those areas. All right, and moving out a little further toward the lake. Okay, so moving out a little further toward the lake, this is pretty much the end of the marina, and there are some little islands over here, and here's an underwater hump off of this island, and this is a great target area. A lot of times it's more spotted bass than striped bass, but if it's holding bait, or if there's a lot of bait in the general area, what you can do is the bait will move closer to the surface as it goes over this hump out here. This is a great spot in June, so we like to troll around out here when you cross this spot, when you cross this underwater feature. And if you can kind of work the trolling so you don't snag them, but keep it at about 40 feet of water as you cross some of these underwater features out here, that's when you can hook up with some striped bass. This is also an interesting bay-like feature as you go down in the bay. And there are times on days when you're seeing all the bait over a given contour. And if all the bait is, say, 20 feet down, but it likes that 50-foot contour, or 60-foot or 40-foot contour, it's really easy to troll the baits along this cove and just make little loops. And this cove is kind of interesting because this is the Lake Lanier Islands Bridge here. So this is a saddle feature, and this is Shoal Creek on the other side of this bridge. But the saddle feature and the fact that you get a little water flow, and depending on the wind and the rain and other factors, sometimes the flow is from the Shoal Creek side toward the Big Creek side. And when you get that flow, the fishing's a little better on the Big Creek side. And as you're making this turn trolling, you can pick up some stripers, but this can be a really good spot to troll in June. By July and August, the thermocline is moving deeper, the fish are moving deeper. They're trying to stay above the layer of low oxygen water that's coming up from the bottom, and they're trying to stay below the thermocline a lot of the times. And so this is actually sort of the main channel here, and this is Three Sisters Island is just off the screen to the top to the north. And so sometimes it's more this area, making trolling circles where sometimes you're over the main channel, sometimes you're over Big Creek, and then sometimes you venture into one of these other areas. And by July and August, early September, the better fishing for striper can be out here because that's where the bait are, and the bigger fish, the predators, are hitting on the bank. You can pick up some really large spotted bass out here also, starting in about June through September. Then once the water starts to cool off in late September, early October, the action sort of starts to move back up Big Creek.
I tremble at the thought of Judgment Day. Lord, I am not ready. Please don't return just yet, for all my sins are put away. My cross is on the floor, and I would burn.